back to the Double Down Podcast, episode 19, presented by WaterWave. Today is Friday, March 24th. I'm excited to be back with y'all. I appreciate you guys staying with me as I took about a month off, but I'm excited to be back, excited to get going, and I'm excited to bring you guys a new episode. Today on the podcast, we got a friend, personal friend of the program, former Wisconsin Badger, was named to 2012 first team All Big Ten, former college All-American, a guy that I've always looked up to, a guy that, I've had a lot of really fun times playing with in the summer. And I'm super excited to have him on the podcast joining me today. Jordan Taylor, appreciate you joining me, brother.
Man, appreciate you having me. I don't know about friend of the program. I don't know about all that, but
we gonna make it happen. I'm gonna send you some merch. I'm gonna get you some merch when we get in town next. We're gonna get it right. We're gonna get it right.
Friend of the podcast, and you my dog for sure. But friend, you I didn't know if you was talking about Minnesota or
No.
what.
I know I can't bring that on you. I can't bring that. I'm not even gonna try to bring that on you. I'm not even gonna try to bring that on you. But no, I'm just talking about the podcast, bro. I would never do nothing like that to you. Never do nothing like that. No, talking about that. No, let's bring it back. Growing up in Minnesota, you were actually Mr. Basketball up in Nilled St. Margaret's. Kind of just take us through those early days in your recruiting process, and then what made you decide, hey, I want to go be a Badger at the University of Wisconsin.
Man. So I committed really early. Recruiting was college was different back then, man. I
Yeah.
committed like my junior year before it even started.
Mhm.
And honestly, I didn't like the recruiting process. I
Yeah.
had, Notre Dame and some other schools, Penn State, blah, blah, Iowa, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't like sitting talking on the phone to coaches. I always felt like it was just a phony process. And Wisconsin was the choice because Coach Gard, who was the assistant at the time, who's now the head coach, was just the most genuine to me. Like he always kept it real. He would talk to me for 45 minutes before they even offered me about whatever. And he just always kept it real and genuine. So that was what really drew me to the basketball program. And then the school obviously kind of speaks for itself. Just with football games, I went to one of those and this, that, and the third, man. So but then back then too, it was like you kind of just went where you knew you would play, and as early you play as early as you can. I think probably you probably started choosing schools based on like system fit and like how your game would fit. Like back then, I didn't even know what the swing was, man. I was like, all right, like I'm gonna play here, I'll figure it out. Like because we played up and down in high school at Benilde. So when I
Yeah.
got to Wisconsin and figure out what the swing was and it's slower, I was like, it's not even really my style, but it worked out, and you just figured it out.
Yeah, how hard was that, for you got kind of figuring out process? Because we talk about a lot of times with our freshmen, coming from different programs, coming in here and, with especially Wisconsin, which has, extreme identity when it comes to the way, you play and way you've always played. How hard was that for you to kind of adjust after? I mean, you were a guy that, put up 24 a game, and plus in high school, a guy that could
Mhm.
score the ball at will. And then you come into a program and, your freshman year, you played in almost every game, but you only average 1.6 points. How's that kind of that difference? Obviously you go on to have a great career, but talk about that difference just coming in and the difference that it kind of takes that sacrifice as a freshman coming into college.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was different back then. 2008, guys, 15 years ago. It's crazy,
Yeah.
but 2008, 2009 is like you're coming in, and there was a element of college basketball where you kind of expected to pay your dues a little bit.
Yeah.
So the adjustment, I mean, I was still frustrated. Obviously, I always wanted to play.
Mhm.
But I also knew I wasn't going to come in and, average 15, 20 first year and be shooting all the shots. But I mean, I wanted to play more. So actually, there was a time where I did think about transferring. And, given the rules now, shoot, I might have. I'm glad that I didn't. Because it helps you grow. There's a lot of positives that come from not transferring. Not to say that that transferring is a bad thing either. But yeah, a lot of it was just like being away from home, kind of going back down the totem pole. I mean, you know how it is. You go
Yeah.
from being the man to like you got to go, but you trying not getting bullied, but you trying to figure it out, and you trying to figure out how your game works, and that was the hardest part. Was probably figuring out how I could play freely within a system that I really wasn't accustomed to playing in. So that was probably the biggest challenge, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the way it's kind of gone now, where it's just so different. And if you want to leave, you can just leave, and you want to start something else out new. It's just like it just created such a different atmosphere, created such a different environment. But
Mhm.
you're a guy that you spent all 4 years at Wisconsin. You stick it out. You turn around after your freshman year. You come in and you start 17 games. You average over 10 points. Kind of just take us through what was the biggest thing that summer for you. Maybe it was a development thing, maybe it was a mindset, kind of just that freshman to sophomore jump.
Yeah, pretty much it was a mindset thing, man. It was like because I started my freshman year a little slow, and I think I had my first big game in college. I think against Gonzaga in the
Mhm.
Maui Invitation. I think I had like 19 or 20, and my dad was. I was still frustrated. Like I really couldn't figure the swing out. Like it was
Yeah,
slow. And again in high school, like I played with our mom battle, a kid named Stu Neville, and we had these Matt Thomas and Spencer Beta, and we got up and down. Like I averaged like 8 rebounds. I think I averaged like 20. I think I damn near averaged like a triple double in high school because I would just get it off the rim, and then I'd push it. We'd have a rim runner, throw it ahead, bring it back, attack. Like
yeah,
we ran the dribble drive offense in high school with Memphis, like Cal Park dribble drive. So
literally.
like
Yeah,
yeah, so it was it was just difficult trying to figure out, how to get my shots because it was a lot of post ups and that was stuff I worked on in the summer,
mhm,
but it was still like, the way Wisconsin played was, you're not taking every open shot at that time.
yeah.
Like you're waiting for the best. So that was foreign to me. But eventually it was just kind of like I just kind of said F it. My dad said stop being a little bitch one day. I don't know if we can cuss, so excuse my
Yo,
language.
you're
Like
good. You're good. You're good.
yeah, so my dad pretty much could said like you're being a little bitch, like just go out there and hoop. And then that's when I kind of just the switch just kind of flipped, and I started playing a lot better after that.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a thing where it's like, you obviously want to come in and you want to help a unit out, you trust what the coach is saying, you want to help a program, but at the same time, like you got recruited there because of the dude you were.
Yeah,
And so it's
100%.
like, yeah, so it's like you're not going to change the kind of game that you're playing to fit in a system, but it's how can we kind of make that work, throughout a system. And it's something, I mean, obviously something you did, you have you talk about the sophomore year, but then you bounce back to a junior year where you average, 18 points. You started all 34 games. Kind of talk about that year because that was kind of the breakout year for you, as a player before. So that was before the ankle injury, correct?
Yeah, yeah, that was before. That was honestly probably the last time I was fully healthy to be
Yeah, we're gonna
entirely
have fun
honest.
on this one today for sure.
Yeah, yeah, but honestly, it kind of that was kind of a spillover from my sophomore year. Like,
Yeah,
John Lewis, one of my very good friends, we do a podcast together called the Shot of Whiskey podcast. That's my shameless plug with Beyond the Big Ten,
there you go.
through Evan Turner's New Amendment production program. So, got a shameless plug. If y'all get a chance to check that out, go ahead and do that. But John got hurt my sophomore year. I think can't remember, he broke his hand or something like that. I can't remember
Mhm.
exactly what the injury was, and I was kind of just thrust into the starting lineup. And with John averaged 15 points a game, so we needed scoring. And
Yeah,
Tim Jarmus was there, and Tim's not wasn't really a scorer, so I was able to really start playing my game because we went to a three guard lineup with
yeah,
myself, Trayvon, and Jason Bohannon. So that was more comfortable for me, and I had a big game against Purdue when they were a top five team, and yada yada yada, so on and so forth. And from that point on, like I went into the summer and I was just like, what, let me be in the gym every day. I was in the gym with Trent Tucker, really
yep.
working on my shot, literally 2, 3 times a day, sometimes four. And it was one of those things where like you just saw the opportunity. And
Mhm.
then when the season came, it was, I had learned the system enough where I could break it off and play, the way I was accustomed to, but also staying within the parameters of what the coaches gave you.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's, obviously it's a testament to the work you put in, but I think also, just the kind of guy you were throughout, your whole career. I don't want to say inevitable, but in my eyes, when I look at your career as a whole, it's like, it was inevitable that you're going to kind of have that, that moment where it came true. And good for you that it did. But then, the first kind of setback comes up, and I know we've kind of had this conversation before when it comes to injury and da 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 da. But you were kind of a relatively healthy guy until 2011. Kind of just
Yeah.
take us through, the first injury, just kind of on the mental side. Like, where'd your head go right away when you hurt the ankle? You were told you had to get surgery. Like, kind of where'd your emotions go? Maybe it was basketball emotions, but maybe just kind of like as a human, the emotions you felt.
The first one when you're 21 or whatever, I had ankle surgery going into my senior year, and I had to miss like out on USA basketball, and I missed out on summer. And at the time, it was kind of just like, oh, whatever, like I'll get the rehab done, and I'll get back on the
Yeah.
court, and it'll be fine. You feel like you're invincible, but then you kind of realize all that time that you missed stacks up. and you
Mhm.
kind of lose a rhythm. And then for me, it was one of those things where it's like my ankle led to a whole bunch of other host of injuries that I had no idea about. Um, like again, my knee was bothering me pretty much that entire year, and I thought I got 5 MRIs on my knee, and they're like, "There's nothing wrong with your knee. Like you're fine, you're fine." I'm like, "Yo,
Wow.
what the fuck? Like my knee is not right."
Yeah.
So come to find out, like a year and a half after I graduated, that I needed hip surgery, and then my hips were messed up. So, but either way, yeah, the first time it was just kind of like it wasn't didn't take too much of a toll. When it started taking a toll is when you get into your pro career,
Yeah.
and you're trying to make the NBA. And obviously I could have left my junior year, but there's a lockout, so I decided to stay.
Mhm.
Wanted to go back and see what happened. uh Figure you're gonna play even better. But then you're trying to chase your dream,
Yeah.
and that's when it kind of mentally as a human, when it starts to like weigh on you, and it's like, God, like damn, like you can't. You realize you're not invincible. You realize to play at the highest level, whether it's NBA or overseas, especially NBA, for a 6'1", 6'2" guard, you need everything you got in your tool bag. You can't be injured. Like so, and I had hip surgery in 2014, and I rehabbed it in 4 months just so I could play summer league and try and take a shot. And it was just like, you're just it's just not gonna work.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna work.
No, yeah, and you're right. And I think too, it's something, I'm going through it right now where it's like, when you're a guy that's kind of on the fringe, a guy that's not guaranteed, like, some of these guys now where it's like you have these 5 stars, it's like, yeah, they're going to be a pro. You look at them, it's
Hmm.
like, you don't have to do a whole lot. You could get hurt. You're going to be a pro. But guys, you mentioned like 6 foot guard, a guy like me where, I was at Division 2 before, you have this slight opportunity window, and when it gets taken from you, kind of just how'd you deal with that as a obviously the ankle injury in 2011, the big hip injury in 2014. How'd you kind of deal with that as like a young guy where it's like, I have these goals, I have these dreams, I put my whole life towards this process, and something that I can't control is kind of taking me out of it? How'd you handle that?
Yeah, so the first couple, like I had surgery in 2011. I had shoulder surgery in 2012. I had a groin surgery in 2013, and then my hip in 2014. So like the whole time, my approach was like work, 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 work.
Yeah.
That was it. Like I'm rehab, I'm a work, to the point where I almost should have probably rested more.
Yeah.
Like I said, instead of coming back in 4 months, I probably should have foregone summer league one summer, and just sat out and just
Mhm.
really sat down and got right. But again, to your point, like when I was trying to, I was, even after my senior year, I was projected like mid or early second to undrafted, and I'm over here trying to, I have like anxiety, like I have to play, like I can't sit out,
Yeah.
I can't afford to sit out. Um, so that it was always just a grind. Like I'm always working, I'm always pounding, always, blah 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 blah. And then after my first hip surgery, or I'm sorry, after that summer league, and I had a second hip surgery in 2017 at like 26. And
Mhm.
that was when it really got hard, because it was like, all right, your dream's slipping away. And it was like, damn, I
Yeah.
partied a lot then. I was just like, your mindset kind of flipped to a degree where it's like, you know what, fuck this. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna enjoy life. It was almost like I had to take a weight off, because it was always just something weighing me down. Like, yeah, I would be watching basketball, like, shit, like I can do that if I was right, if I was healthy, but I just haven't been healthy. And it's just, it makes you mad. You start like box score watching
Yeah.
guys, and it almost makes you like a a miserable human, because it's like, you're almost like preying on other people's downfalls in a way, even though it has nothing to do with you. Like you could be like, man, he gonna go 0 for 6 tonight. I could do that. Like, and it's just like that has nothing to do with you. So it's like that's the stuff you go through. And it took me a minute to be like, you know what, that ain't it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just kind of adjust the way that you approach the game. And at that point I just got like more comfortable being overseas and just accepting like where I was at.
Yeah. Obviously, you talk about, your journey, being in Italy. Well, you started playing with the Atlanta Hawks in the 2012 Summer League. You then go to Italy. You mentioned coming back. You played for the Bucks in the 2014 Summer League. Obviously these NBA dreams were still on your mind as you were overseas. At what point was it kind of like, I'm gonna enjoy, being overseas, like you just mentioned? Was it after an injury? Was it kind of a mindset, flip? Because I'm sitting here in a position where it's like, I still have these dreams. Obviously, you dream of you playing there, but at this point in my career, it's like, it's going to be tough. Obviously, I'm not going to give up on those dreams yet, but obviously, you kind of got to have that self-realization, that kind of moment where it's like, this is where you're at and this is where your career is taking you. How did you get to that point? Because I think that's a tough deal.
Yeah. I think uh, I would go to summer league, and like I had a coach, and the first summer I was in Atlanta, and he was like, I was starting, and Brad Wanamaker was there. He was a big time EuroLeague
Yeah.
guy and all that, and we're in camp with him, and like we had John Jenkins was our rookie, and they liked me a lot, but I just couldn't, like, literally just couldn't do the things I wanted to do because, and he came up to me the following summer when I played. I think it was or Toronto. I think it was, yeah, Toronto. And he's like, "Man, you didn't say you was hurt the whole time." And I was like, "What was I supposed to say?" He's like, "Say it like the coach was." And then whole time he's saying that to me, and I was still hurt. So I was like, um, so it's like when you keep getting positive feedback. After Toronto, Dwayne Casey came up to me and a couple of, he was like, "You guys are NBA, could be used, like you guys are capable of being NBA guys." Like, so I mean, some of that shit is lip service, but it's like,
Yeah.
when you're hearing that, you kind of keep going, which is cool. Um, I had an opportunity in Toronto. It was bad luck where I was gonna go to training camp. I had money to go to training camp and have a partial guarantee, and Brian Colangelo ends up getting fired,
Mm.
and they bring in Masai Ujiri, who's the GM now,
Yeah.
and Masai he just didn't view me the same way as Colangelo did. So, it was disheartening, stuff like that. But I think you really just got comfortable overseas. I think after my second surgery, and I had played in Tel Aviv, I played in Berlin, and I was going back to Tel Aviv, and I really enjoyed Tel Aviv. Like, I just had a good time there. Like, I really enjoyed it. I had friends there. I knew people there. The league was fun. It's almost like it's almost like a former college star high school league. Like,
Yeah.
that's everybody's in close proximity. So
Mhm.
I just enjoyed it. At that point, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just put all my energy into making the most of overseas and just enjoy the moment and enjoy where I'm at. And then of course I got injured again right after that. So
Yeah, no, that's just how it goes. No, you're right. And you mentioned that 2016, you guys were fortunate enough to win the German Cup. Kind of take us through that, because that's kind of the time I feel like you kind of were able to kind of just realize, hey, I'm over here for a reason. What happened in my career has happened for a reason, and now I get to kind of be a champion here in Germany. Kind of take us through that moment before we get into your MCL in 2020.
Yeah, so that was we had a Serbian coach, but Berlin is one of the best cities in the world, man. And I actually ended up meeting a girl over there, and it was just kind of like I felt at home. Like, I
Mhm.
felt really like, obviously it's not the States, but I still felt a little homesick. But I felt that was the first time that I really felt like I wasn't missing anything back home
Yeah.
at all. So I was just like, all right, like I was really enjoying basketball. I broke my thumb that year, so I had to sit out a little bit, but I came back from my thumb injury and we won the cup. This, that, and the third. We played Euro Cup. We did all right. And that's when, honestly, that was probably the most frustrating injury because at the end of that year we were in like third place. We dropped to sixth because I ended up my hip messed up, and as soon as my hip messed up, I knew I was gonna have surgery again.
Yeah.
So that was probably the most frustrating out of all the injuries. And at that time, I was still only like, I think I was like 26. So like the NBA wasn't completely dead. Like, it was still
Hmm.
like I had some EuroLeague teams calling me at the time. And then unfortunately, like I said, just couldn't go because of injury. So it's one of those things like you go play well at EuroLeague, 26, 27, who knows, So that was probably the one that hurt the most. But it's also the time that I was like, I really started realizing that just raise your value as much as you could overseas and see what happened.
Yeah, obviously it's a thing where, I talked to several guys who have been overseas, and then, you still keep that dream alive, but you also realize, like, hey, I'm here in the moment and I'm excited to be a part of, what's going on. And, obviously your career, you bounced all over the place. You ended up being in Japan, correct, in 2019. That was before the injury?
Yeah, no, that was before the MCL injury. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was after my second hip,
yeah,
and I ended up, yeah, I played EuroLeague in France, in Asvel, and then I went to Japan, right after the pandemic.
yeah.
So
And then
2020 and then 2021.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. You play in Japan, and then you come down with the MCL. Obviously, you've been through the hip stuff. You've been through a lot of stuff, but you kind of were able to stay away from the knees for the most part. Kind of take us through that injury, the MCL injury, and then kind of just what happened, and kind of like the mental responses to it as well.
Yeah, so the MCL one, again, that was tough because I was in a city called Sapporo, and our team was not very good, but I was playing solid. Like, Japan's more of a league where it's like, you just got to go get numbers, kind of just
Yeah.
go play well, and even if the team's not doing well, you can get picked up. So I actually had a pretty big contract offer Pretty big contract offer from Tokyo, which is like the biggest team in Japan, Alvark Tokyo. And like it was supposed to. So my agent said it's supposed to get a contract offer from there,
Yeah.
and which would have been my biggest contract to date, honestly.
Mm.
And then of course, like April, I think April of the season, the season was over in 3 weeks. We had like 5 games left or something like that.
Oh,
Teammate falls into my knee, tear my MCL. And I was at that point, I was just I was out almost just like laughing. Like it was one of those things where you're just like numb. Like
yeah.
it's so terrible. It's funny. But I was it was disappointing, but at the same time, I was just like I thought about retiring honestly at one
Really.
point after that, just because I was like, it's a pandemic. The money I was making was still really good, but I was just like, shit, I keep getting injured, and it's the middle of the pandemic. There's more to life than basketball, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, but I ended up signing with the same team because their guard got in some trouble. So I ended up signing with the Alvark Tokyo team later in the year, but just for way less money. And then playing there, and I had to, it took me a minute to get back from my MCL, but yeah, it was that one was probably just like I was upset, but I also was just like, God damn, like who cares?
Yeah, and well, no, you're right. And that attitude is, I think it's something that it's hard for kind of other people to understand too. Cause,
Yeah.
I talk about, with many people on the podcast, I talk about kind of like, the satire and the humor of injury. And it's like, good things are happening and then this stupid shit comes up and I got to deal with it. How do you make sense of that? Because it's like you want to laugh it off, but it's also like, fuck, I was so close to like where right, the next spot I wanted to go to type of deal. How do you kind of make sense of that kind of emotion that one feels when you get injured like that?
Honestly, you almost like you wanna part of it you want to become like helpful to other people. Like when you hurt your
Hmm.
knee the second time, it's almost like a Alcoholics Anonymous, but for injured people.
Literally,
It's like,
literally.
yeah, like it's like
This is rehab. This is
this
therapy, bro.
is yeah, mental rehab, just like talking to people. And when you hurt your knee, like I was like sick for you, and I understand the feeling, but it's
Hmm.
like it's one of those things where it's like it is what it is. That's all you
Yeah.
can do, and like it it kills some of your passion for the game, but it also makes you grow up in the sense that now you're like, I literally was attacking my rehab at some points just for my own like health, for my
Yeah.
own physical well-being, so I could walk when I was older. Like I was like, this
Hmm.
is important for my body. So it's like you learn how to be a pro. You learn how to like take care of business even when the passion isn't there. And I think that's one thing, like when you're a kid growing up, like basketball, you love basketball. I still love basketball to this day, like more than anything. I probably love, if
100%.
when I get married, I probably will tell I love basketball more than my wife. Like potentially more than my kids. I don't know. We'll see. But like I don't know about that one, but we'll see, man. Like, but like I love basketball, but it makes you like approach the game in a more professional or just monotonous but or methodical way. Like that's really the best way that I can put it. And then like I said, when you're a kid you love it, and you realize when you're older there are things that really do take the joy from it, and your situation doesn't really matter. Like, yeah, I think people look at guys in the NBA and you're like, oh, you're in the NBA, like why are you not that? But there's situations in the NBA where guys just aren't happy or they're
Yeah.
not enjoying themselves, and it's hard to put in the work and the grind when it's still a job.
Hmm.
So when I was in Japan, especially, and I was coming back from the injury, it was just like it was a job, and I did rehab every day, and I attacked it, and I went through it. But it wasn't. I'm not gonna say it's entirely enjoyable. It was really,
Yeah.
I was making really good money,
Hmm.
and now I'm in London, with London Lions playing Euro Cup, and I'm 33 going on 34, and I feel this like renewed sense of joy for the
Yeah.
game because I'm in a city that I love. My coach is amazing. All our whole coaching staff is amazing. Sam Decker's here playing with me. Our teammates are cool. And it's like at one point, I was like, oh, I don't know how many years I got left, but if I was in London, shoot, I might play till I'm 40. So it's one of those things that, yeah, your injuries, you just learn to go with the flow and just attack things in a methodical way, regardless of how your mood is that day.
Yeah, no, and I think it's learned. It's a deal where, I explained to a lot of people about injury, and it's like, people feel so bad for you and da 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 da, but it's like, it's just a part of my process now. It's a part of my journey.
Yeah.
And, I think, a guy like you can, testify to that as well, where it's like, all these things have, came up, whether you talk about thumb, elbow, hip, regardless of what it is, these things have come up, and yeah, they've set me back, but I'm in a spot now where it's like, things are moving forward. So, when I talk about moving forward, what's kind of next for you? If something comes up, if, da 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 da, like, are you enjoying London? How are things? Like, what's right now? What's going on right now? Forget about the past.
Like I've always said I want to get into media, and
Yeah,
broadcasting and stuff like that. So, I have some opportunities to do that here in the future.
cool.
But like I said, I love London. So as long as they'll have me, Coach Ryan Schmidt is here and Brett Berman's our GM. As long as they'll have me, if it's through the end of this year or the next two or next year, whatever,
Yeah,
that probably that probably be my path. Obviously, if the money's got to be right too. But
yeah, for
it's
sure.
one thing that to kind of go backwards on your last question and tie it into this one is I think the injuries give you this sense of confidence,
Mhm.
particularly outside of basketball, because you do lose confidence in your body and
For
like some
sure.
because you just your body doesn't brain body doesn't match up
Yep.
sometimes. But from just attacking life. Like I've had 8 surgeries in 10 years, 11 years,
Wow.
and I still played 11 years pro at a relatively high level,
Mhm.
not the NBA, but EuroLeague, Euro Cup.
Very high level.
So
Yes.
so to me, I'm like, damn, if I can do that, then there's not much that I can't make happen.
Hmm.
So as far as like moving forward, like I said, it could be broadcasting, but I'm extremely confident in whatever it is. I think it's just if you lock in on one thing, then you can make a lot of things happen, man. So
Yeah, no, I love it.
we'll
Well,
see.
I'm gonna wrap up with one last question. We like to wrap up every podcast with, this final question. With everything you've been through with your career, bouncing all over, Europe and, all over the country, what advice would you give to 12-year-old Jordan Taylor? Whether it's, professional basketball advice, whether it's, fighting through an injury, adversity, what kind of advice would you give a young version of yourself when it comes to a basketball career?
Oh man, that's tough. That's tough to put into like
It
one
is.
thing. I guess it's cliche, but I think I would just say like cherish the moment, like live in the moment,
Hmm.
and really put all your effort into each day, each moment, man, because it
Yeah.
goes by so fast. And I think basketball players, you're always determining your worth in some way. Like you're always looking to the future, and you're always like someone else is trying to value you or question your worth, and you're always trying to prove your worth. And
Hmm.
I'd say just, man, just put in the work every day and it'll come back to you. Like treat the game right, live in the moment. And I mean, I'm sure you can relate to that. Like,
Yeah.
it's even from the time I can't remember the last. This is really the first year since I'm older. I've made some money, and I'm kind of just playing like I'm playing for fun. Like I
Yeah.
don't really care about my stats. Obviously I want to do well. But I want the team to win. And
Mhm.
the last time I could really think where I was just like not concerned about, damn, like I gotta have this many points, I gotta have this many assists
Mhm.
and win, was probably like junior, senior high school.
Wow. Wow.
So it's always like, I mean, and again, you know that it's always like, man, I gotta play well, and there's always this
Mhm.
sense of like, even if your team wins, if you don't play well, it's like, all right, well, obviously you're happy the team wins, but there's always that little bit where it's like, man, like God, you know. And I think even when you have the games where you have 20 and you're like, I don't know, 8 for 15 from the field, but maybe you missed a short floater or a layup, you're like, damn, I should have had 25, like,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I should have
Yeah.
20. So you're always like you're never satisfied. And
Mhm.
I think you have to be hungry but somewhat satisfied. And I think that just comes through living in the moment and putting in the work every day.
Yeah, I love it. Dame was actually talking about, after his 71 point game, he was talking about how he got blocked on a couple and he missed like an open shot. And he's like, I should have had 90. And it's like, I
Yeah.
think so many times as basketball players, we try to nitpick the things that went wrong or the things that we didn't do well. It's like, bro, it's a game, enjoy the fact that you're blessed enough to go out and play this game in front of people. And I think that's, tremendous advice. And we appreciate you coming on the podcast. Everybody go follow Jordan on all socials. Make sure you go check out his podcast. I'll definitely link that as well. But that is episode 19 of the Double Down podcast. I appreciate you all listening, and we'll be back next week for another episode. Peace.